Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Brantley, and I am welcoming you to another edition of On the Mark. Each Wednesday we're here between the hours of 8 and 10 to discuss things that we feel are of some importance, topics and issues that impact our island, our country, our region, our world. This show has become a staple over the past nigh 2 decades now. And right here on Von Radio, many join us each Wednesday from 8 to 10. I thank all of you who are tuned in. We have many avenues now for people to listen on Facebook, on YouTube. Some are listening the old-fashioned way on radio, via the internet, however you're listening. Thank you for being a part of the show. Good evening to the people here in Nevis, those in St. Kitts, those in the wider Caribbean. Good evening to the people in the United States and Canada, those who are in the United Kingdom, wherever you are. Good evening to you, and welcome to this edition of On the Mark. I start the show on a very somber note. This evening, as I got ready to come here, I pondered what I would talk about. I pondered what I could say, because earlier this evening I received the type of call that no one really wants to receive. And that was a call from my dear friend Derek Liebert, the son of Edric W. Stanley, who called to indicate that we had lost Edric. The news was shocking to me because for most of my life, and certainly for all of my political life, I have known Edric Stanley. He and I have enjoyed a wonderful relationship. I have counted him among one of my closest friends and advisors, someone who never told me what I wanted to hear, but always told me what I needed to hear. I found him to be fair, to be logical, someone who understood politics, understood Nevis, and someone who has, over the course of my political life, given me invaluable advice. Edric was my friend, and I was very sad to hear of his loss. The family has lost a father, a family member. Nevis has lost an icon, a stalwart. Von Radio has lost the heaviest of its heavyweights. When I joined Von Radio's panel on the heavyweights many years ago, I remember it was Carl Claxton and they had Reliable Motors who had suggested my name to Webo, and Webo gave me the opportunity to be on the air as a youngster. As a young lawyer, I had just come back, and I was thrown in among heavyweights like Edric W. and Theodore Hobson, Kenneth Williams from the Observer, he used to be here at one point, and others. And over the years I learned so much sitting around this little table here at Von Radio from these great divisions. We didn't always agree. In fact, we disagreed on many occasions. But they treated me well, they groomed me, they assisted me. And through that program on Von Radio, I got my voice, public voice. And at every step of the way, Edric Stanley, or Edric W, as I affectionately called him, was there for me, to guide me, to offer his advice, to offer his assistance, to offer that little call sometimes that can change your day for the better. And so I really want to extend to Derek and all of his children, all of his family, all of his friends, my very deepest condolences. I'm not sure when again Nevis will see the likes of Edric Stanley. Like him, don't like him, it really doesn't matter. Sometimes we just have to recognize the contribution that people would have made. And I believe he contributed, and contributed well, to the life and times here on the island of Nevis. He had his phraseology that was almost synonymous with him. At this critical juncture, when you heard that, you knew it was Edric W. The right to secede enshrined in clause 113 is constitutionally unconstitutional. You know you were listening to Edric W. And in the last election, he was a staple over the years as an election commentator. And in the last election, in December of 2022, when all the other panelists were predicting that I had lost my seat and that the good people of St. John's had voted me out, Edric and Edric alone on this panel said that he had no fear because, in his words, my horse will come home. And that has stuck with me because it is when the chips are down sometimes and when others are counting you out that your true friends stand up. And Edric said, my horse will come home, and I came home in flying colors. I shall miss Edric. I shall miss my friend. I shall miss that voice of reason, that person who never wanted anything out of politics, never wanted anything from me, never once called me and asked me for any favor. He just wanted the best for Nevis. And so I want, on behalf of my family, on behalf of my government that I'm privileged to lead, on behalf of all of us here at One Radio, I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to his family, his friends, and all of those he would have touched over the years. He was one of the greats, a true Nevision stalwart. And I don't use those words lightly. Someone who traveled abroad in his earlier days, accomplished what he could, came home and contributed to the business community here, the politics here, the life and times of this island, the debate, the cut and thrust of discussion. Edric was a man among men. And I'm to hope that he will be fondly remembered by those who are fortunate to write the history of this island. And that there will be a chapter dedicated to the man that we knew as Edric W. Stanley. And tonight I commit to his memory that so long as I have breath, so long as I am able, that this horse will always come home. Ladies and gentlemen, I actually thought whether I should even have the show tonight. So hurt I am, troubled I am by this loss. But I've often said that this show is important. It's important in good times. It is equally important in bad times. It's important that we engage with each other, and that is a person who has the awesome privilege of leading this island at this time in our history, that I come and that I am prepared to engage with you. At some point during the show, it is customary that we will open the phone lines and allow you to call in and say your piece. I'm hopeful that when that comes, that those who are listening will use the opportunity to call in, of course, on any topic on which they wish to speak. But I'm hopeful that they will also call in and perhaps share with us an anecdote, an experience, or simply extend condolences to the family of a great Nevision, Edric W. Stanley. I will leave that there and move on to a few other matters that I would wish to update you on. First of all, we will have tomorrow the monthly press conference by me as Premier of Nevis. I feel quite proud that this was a commitment that I made when I first ran for Premier as the leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement in 2017, December to be precise, that I would introduce a monthly press conference where I would engage with members of the press and they would be able to ask their questions, and hopefully through that dialogue and engagement with the press I'd be able to share information with the public. I am happy that since the people invested their trust and confidence in me in 2017, by my tally that is now nearly 7 years ago, that I have kept that commitment, and that we have religiously and faithfully each and every month except the month of December, because that is usually the budget period, we have engaged with the members of the press, and I have tried to provide a fulsome report, and where there are issues that I don't have the answers, I've gone back and tried on the next occasion to provide the answers. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that whatever your political persuasion may be, the evidence is clear that as Premier of Nevis, I have undoubtedly been the most accessible public servant in that role on the island. I am here each Wednesday. So long as I'm able and so long as I'm on island, I am here. 2 hours uninterrupted, live radio, taking your phone calls. You having the opportunity from the comfort and anonymity of your house, your car, whether you're on island or you're overseas, to call in and share your views and perspectives. Some suggested when I became Premier that I ought not to continue with the show. I beg to differ, and I am very pleased that I am here through the grace of God, the strength that God has given me, every Wednesday from 8 to 10 right here on Von Radio, a show made possible because of the generosity of the law firm of Daniel Brantley. And they have paid for this show now for nearly 20 years. I have still regular engagements with members of the public in what I call my open day at my office. It used to be every Thursday, but I admit that I have not been as consistent with that for a variety of reasons, but I will try to reintroduce it every Thursday. Nevertheless, we have continued to engage one-on-one when people from across the island, in fact some even from St. Kitts, come to my office and engage with me on issues that are affecting them. I have my monthly press conference that will be convened for the month of October tomorrow. That too is an innovation. No Premier in the history of Nevis has ever put himself before the press on a regular basis every single month. I have done so. I am also an avid user and consumer of social media. And many people, not just here, but across the Federation, across the region, across the world, reach out to me via my social media platforms, whether it's X, Instagram, or Facebook. They get in touch, they inbox me, they have concerns, and I do try my very best to address them or to give them some guidance. As I say, we are not allowed to mark our own papers. That is for others to do. But I really challenge the public to indicate which leader, not just here in Nevis, not just in St. Kitts Nevis, but I would even go so far to say which leader in the region has so consistently made him or herself available to the people that he or she serves. And I'm proud of that. And that is why my office will always say that no matter how early or how late, no matter my schedule, I always say we have to keep that appointment with the press every month. And so tomorrow I will once again be engaging with members of the press. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, I know that the island of Nevis and the wider Federation, that we have quite a large Hindu population. people who would have come here principally from Guyana, but a few as well from Trinidad, and those who might have come from as far away as India itself, who are adherents to the Hindu faith. Tomorrow marks their celebration of lights. It is referred to as Diwali. And I want to take this opportunity to wish all of our Hindu population, all of my constituents in Cane Garden, and all of the Hindus that live here in Nevis and those in St. Kitts, and all of the Hindu population globally, those in India, those who are outside India. I want to wish you a happy Diwali. May the Festival of Lights bring peace, happiness to you and your families. And may tomorrow be a day of joy as you celebrate this beautiful occasion of Diwali. Ladies and gentlemen, I had decided on the first occasion that I got that I had to speak to you about my recent trip to the island of Bermuda. Now, I recognize that everything I do, and in fact many things that I have not done, are nevertheless the source of much chatter by the opposition here. And so no sooner than my trip was announced that I was traveling to Bermuda, then the usual suspects start with the accusations and trying to find something negative. But I'm grateful that my posture, my approach to leadership has been one of openness with the people of Nevis. I have just moments ago said about the extent to which I have made myself accessible to the people whom I serve. But beyond that, I have had a very clear position that as the leader of this island, it is my job to be open, honest and forthright with you in terms of what is happening. Sometimes the news is good, sometimes it is not so good. But I believe that the people of this island can trust what I say because they understand that throughout my long career now as a politician, I have not lied to them, I have not sought to misrepresent the position to them. I have come with the truth every time. And that is why when I travel, I always indicate once it's official travel where I'm going and what I'm going to do. And when I come back, I always try to report to you on what I did whilst I was traveling on your behalf. To be sure, there are occasions when I travel on my personal business. I travel with my family, or I take a few days off, and that certainly is not public business. But you can be assured that whenever I leave this island on official business, that I shall report to you. And so let me spend just a few moments to speak to you about the island of Bermuda and why I thought it appropriate to travel there. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just received our census figures. And our most recent census numbers tell me one thing. And that one thing is that St. Kitts and Nevis is woefully underpopulated. The island of St. Kitts at 68 square miles only has about 38,000 people according to that census. The island of Nevis at 36 square miles only has 13,500 people. Together, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis at 104 square miles only has 51,000 souls living here. 51,000. In fact, I have remarked elsewhere that based on the census numbers, the last time that our population was at 50,000 was in 1960. It has therefore taken to St. Kitts and Nevis 64 years, from 1960 until now, for us to get back to 50,000 people. I am about to say something which I hope you do not find to be startling. We cannot grow St. Kitts and Nevis. We cannot develop St. Kitts and Nevis. We cannot achieve a sustainable island state in St. Kitts and Nevis with 50,000 people. When you start to reflect that in that 50,000 you have the very young, you have the very old, you have those who are suffering from some type of disability and therefore are differently abled. You have some who are sick and infirm. You have some, for whatever reason, can't function at an optimal level. And when you start paring away, you realize that your population that is productive, that is working, that is paying taxes gets progressively smaller. Your ability to attract industry, to attract manufacturing, your ability to have a progressive tax structure that is spread across the widest possible spectrum of taxpayers, all of those are compromised because of the very few people that you have here. And so it started me thinking, if this little island of Nevis, and if the wider federation is going to get to the next level of development, we cannot do it without people. And for a long time, brothers and sisters, we have overlooked our own people, and we have always looked for development, for investment to the so-called foreign investor. And whilst there's nothing wrong with that, and we welcome all foreign investment, it occurred to me that we have a vibrant diaspora, and that our people who have settled in and done well across the globe, that they too should be called upon to help us grow our country. After all, it is their country too. And so that thought started to percolate in my head. And I said, what if we were able to get some perhaps out of the box thinking, a different approach, where we're not seeking to deny, we're not seeking to forego our appeal to foreign investors, but we are simultaneously building out policies that will make us attractive to our own people. And so earlier this summer, I was invited by my dear friend Janet Maynard in Canada, and I traveled there to speak at an event for her charity, Circle of Care. And whilst I had prepared remarks, when I got there I decided that I would speak extemporaneously and I would put those remarks to one side. And my opening statement to Nevisians and Kittitians gathered there in Toronto at that event was that it was time for them to come home. Naturally, the crowd laughed because so many of them had lived there for such a long time. But the sentiment that I was seeking to express to our people in Canada was that, listen, the St. Kitts Nevis that you left and that your parents left back in the early 20th century, the mid 20th century, where our main export was people because things here were hard, that was not the Sincus Nevis of today. The Sincus Nevis of today had developed in leaps and bounds since those days. And we now had a high level of modernity. And what we needed now, and what we do need, is for our people to rekindle their interest in and love affair with this, the land of their birth or of their ancestry. And so some people became concerned. They said, are you asking us to pull up roots after being here for 50 years and just move back? And I said, not necessarily. Certainly for those who can, we welcome them. But whether you move back physically or not, many of our people are in a position where they can invest, they can have second homes, they can have retirement home, they can build something, start a business. The youngsters who are coming out of university, who are in many instances in foreign lands, notwithstanding that they were born there, having difficulty, having to deal with issues of race and various isms that militate against them progressing. We say, listen, you have a country here that wants you, that loves you, and to which you belong. You may have been born in England. You may have been born in America or Canada. But your roots, that which anchors you, that lies in these twin islands of St. Christopher and Nevis. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was a simple message in Canada. I since had the occasion to speak to the diaspora conference that was convened here. And they came to the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park, and I had occasion to engage with them. And I used my line again. I said, it is time for you to come home. And so I give you that background because I wanted to contextualize why it is I decided as Premier of Nevis to travel to Bermuda. And I want our people to understand that by some estimates, as many as 50%, I want to say that again, by some estimates, as many as 50%, or perhaps I ought to say as much as 50% of Bermudans trace their roots to St. Kitts and Nevis. I want you to reflect on that for a moment. That there's a little island out there in the Atlantic called Bermuda. And that as much as half of their population trace their lineage, their roots, their ancestry to St. Kitts and Nevis. And I have been amazed that there hasn't been a greater effort on the part of governments past and present to seek to engage our people in Bermuda. And why do I say that? I wonder if you recognize that Bermuda is only 21 square miles. That is, it is smaller even than Nevis. But Bermuda has some 65,000 people living there. That is, its population is bigger than the whole of St. Kitts and Nevis combined. You remember I said that the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis is 104 square miles. 68 plus 36. But only has 51,000 people. It therefore means that the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis is 5 times the size of Bermuda. But Bermuda has 65,000 people and we only have 51,000. Nevis, which is 1.5 times the size of Bermuda, because Bermuda is 21, we're 36, only has 13,500 people, But Bermuda has 65,000 people. So the first observation I would make is that Bermuda, given its landmass, has a population which lends itself to greater sustainability than we do. Because where Bermuda has a potential workforce, a pool of people, taxpayers, consumers, at 65,000. Little Nevis only has 13,500. And Little St. Kitts only has 38,000. When my staff did some research in preparation for the trip, they came back with some startling numbers. They told me that the GDP of St. Kitts and Nevis, the gross domestic product, was just over $1 billion per annum. 1.08 billion, I think it was, US dollars. That's the global stock of goods and services, and basically how you measure the economy. GDP. The GDP of Little Bermuda is 7 times that of St. Kitts and Nevis. When I saw the number, I almost fell off my chair. I said, imagine that. 7 times the GDP per capita, a measure that the world usually uses to assess the wealth of the people in a nation. That of St. Kitts and Nevis is great by Caribbean standards, with just, I believe, over 20,000 US dollars per person, GDP per capita. Bermuda stands at 122,000 US dollars. So again, over 5 times what it is here in St. Kitts and Nevis. In fact, Bermuda boasts one of the highest GDP per capita, not only in this region but in the world. So when I saw all of this, I reflected and thought to myself why it is that St. Kitts and Nevis has not made more of an effort, sustained and concerted effort, to engage with Bermuda. And so I decided to go. When I went to Bermuda, I discovered that the Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, as Prime Minister, had gone there in 2010. In fact, I am told that he addressed the Bermuda Parliament in 2010. I found out that Minister Samuel Duggins had been there sometime this year, I believe, and that Ambassador Walwyn, Christine Walwyn, had also visited. She is with the diaspora unit. And so we have had interactions with Bermuda from time to time. In fact, I met one gentleman who indicated that at some point Premier Joseph Parry had also come to Bermuda. I confess I don't remember that, but he told me that. But what we have lacked is a sustained approach. And these are our people. Ladies and gentlemen, I landed in Bermuda last week, Thursday, late at night. And I was amazed because Nevisians, Kittitians living in Bermuda found their way to the airport in Bermuda at 11 o'clock at night to greet Sharon and I as we came off the plane and got outside. The Bermudan government extended the utmost courtesies, and I want to thank them. On the Friday morning, my first meeting was with the Premier of Bermuda, the Honorable David Burt, a young man, just 46 years old. And we had an excellent meeting. In fact, he said something that has stayed with me. He said, after I explained to him why I had come to Bermuda, that in essence my message was a simple one. It is time for Bermudans of St. Kitts and Nevis ancestry to come home to St. Kitts and Nevis, to help us to develop this country just as we helped to develop Bermuda. And his words will always remain with me. The Honorable Premier said, "You are pushing at an open door." Put differently, this is something that we too would like to see happen. The government there is open, it's warm, it's receptive. Do you know that the Deputy Premier of Bermuda, Honorable Mr. Raban, that he too traces his roots to St. Kitts and Nevis? Do you know that one of the longest serving members of Parliament in Bermudan history, Sir Walter Lister, traces his roots to St. Kitts and Nevis? Do you know that I met an MP there called Simmons, traces his roots to St. Kitts and Nevis? I met an MP there, my good friend Christopher Famous, traces his roots to St. Kitts and Nevis. And every Bermudan who was a black Bermudan that I encountered while I was there, I asked them the same question: are you from St. Kitts and Nevis? And invariably the answer was, that's where my grandmother comes from, that's where my grandfather comes from. After the meeting with Premier Burt, I was afforded an opportunity to have a town hall meeting, and we did this at the Anglican Church Hall in a part of Bermuda called Devonshire. Interestingly, the church hall is named for a Mr. Nisbet, also, you guessed it, from St. Kitts and Nevis. They told me, because the arrangements were made there by our honorary consul, Mrs. Louise Tannock, and I want to publicly thank her because she did an excellent job putting things together. She was assisted by my good friend Renelda Davis and others, many of whom, long before I decided to go to Bermuda, are already building here, investing here in St. Kitts and Nevis, have homes here, and are traveling back and forth. And so we went to this town hall, and Mrs. Tannock said to me that she expected 60 or so people to show up at the town hall. And so I went there expecting to engage more of a conversation than a speech, because I really wanted to hear from the people there what the issues they had. You could imagine my shock, therefore, that as we are driving to get to the venue, we start seeing cars parked, in some cases a considerable distance away. And I commented to the driver, I said, "Oh, there must be some event happening in the area." And he agreed that there must be something going on, because I could not have expected that all of those cars were people who had come for this town hall. So imagine then when we pulled up at this hall to find out that every available seat in the hall was full. People were standing along the sides and in the back, and people were actually standing outside the doors of the hall, because when we expected 60, we ended up with over 200 people who showed up. And the atmosphere, ladies and gentlemen, it was family. It was warm, it was welcoming, and the enthusiasm in the room for St. Kitts and Nevis. The people of Bermuda are hungry to reconnect with St. Kitts and Nevis. They start to talk about buying property, investing in real estate. They want their citizenship to be sorted out. They want to reconnect with their families here. And as they got up one after the other to speak of their grandmother, their grandfather, their great-grandmother, their great-grandfather, the history started to unfold. And I think that it's a sad commentary on us, that many of us who are here in St. Kitts and Nevis do not know that history. We do not know that in the late 1800s and early 1900s that there were these boats that they call lady boats that took our people from St. Kitts and Nevis and took them to Bermuda, because Bermuda at the time was building the famous dockyards. And I found it so interesting that in a conversation with Sir Walter Lister, long-serving member of their parliament, now retired, who personally decided to come with us on a tour of the dockyards, that he said that his father had come to Bermuda and had come as a youngster to work in a menial position at the dockyard. And he, Sir Walter, had got to a point where he eventually became the chairman of the board that controlled the dockyard. You see the point that I'm trying to make? His father came as a menial worker from St. Kitts, and the son ended up being the chairman of the board that controlled all that his father had worked to build. And let me tell you, brothers and sisters, if you see this dockyard, if you see what our people built with their hands, their sweat in Bermuda, I believe that it will give us a newfound sense of pride that Nevisians and Kittitians, Kittitians and Nevisians, our people, traveled the high seas, braved the Atlantic Ocean to get to this little island in the middle of the Atlantic, and contributed, and have been contributing now for well over a century. I marveled at that. Yes, there are Jamaicans there. Yes, there are Barbadians there. But the longest history with people of the Caribbean and Bermuda are the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. The Bajans went, I'm told, in the 1950s and 60s as police officers and to fill civil service jobs, etc. But you have now over 120 years of history where people in Bermuda, by some estimates 50% of the population, can say that my grandmother, my grandfather, my father, my mother, my great-grandma is from St. Kitts or Nevis. And it made me proud. Not in a way of being haughty, but proud in a way of feeling that here you had an island that was doing so well, that was in large measure built by Kittitians and Nevisians. Here you have all these parliamentarians elected, sitting in these positions. You had these preachers at these churches. You had head teachers. You had business people. One of the most successful businessmen in the history of Bermuda, they said when he died, I'm told he was the richest man in Bermuda, was a man called Yarwood, who was from St. Kitts. Our people. And so I ask the question rhetorically this evening. If our people could have left us and gone to Bermuda and developed Bermuda to the point where Bermuda now boasts one of the highest standards of living in the world, one of the highest GDP per capita in the world, then doesn't it make sense for us now in 2024 to say to them, come, Come home. Come home and help us now develop. When I landed at the airport in Bermuda, I looked at my wife, she looked at me. I am prepared to say tonight that there is no airport in the Caribbean that I have seen that can compare. You're not getting off any plane and walking down any stairs and pulling a bag across any tarmac. You're not getting into a bus to be transported. They have first class jet bridge. You are as if you've landed at JFK or any of the major airports you can find in the so-called first world. Immaculate, modern, state of the art. I could not believe an island 21 square miles. Then they drove me past the hospital. I said, my God, is that the hospital? Modern, high-rise building in an island 21 square miles. Then they took me to what they call one of their mega schools. My jaw fell to the floor. I could not believe the level of infrastructure. It looked like a college campus. Immaculate. They said this is one of their high schools, because they don't have their schools scattered all over. They've consolidated them into what they call a mega school. Words really, I can't find them to describe what I saw. The road infrastructure is good. I think the road infrastructure in Nevis is comparable. They have some narrow roads in some places, but also some that are much wider than ours. The cars, as you know, in Bermuda, they limit 1 car per household. There's still quite a few cars, but then they also limit the size of the cars. So your car can't be any more than a particular width that is set by law. We saw not one bottle, not one bottle cap, not one plastic bag, not one styrofoam package, not one scrap of garbage anywhere on the roads as we drove. Nowhere. There's foolishness that happens here in Nevis, where people feel they must drive and eat their food and throw it out the window, throw their bottles out the window. That does not exist in Bermuda. And then I had occasion to sit one-on-one with people that I know there. People who I know do not support the current government in Bermuda. And I marveled that in their discussions, even though they had concerns about some of the decision making, not one of them talked badly about Bermuda. Not one. Not one of them was prepared to air any dirty laundry about Bermuda to me. I said to myself, this is rather interesting. Because if there are issues in Bermuda, it was very obvious to me that Bermudans were saying, we will resolve our issues internally. But we ain't gonna engage in no bad talking of Bermuda with nobody. That for me was an eye-opener. I was then afforded the opportunity to go to something they call the Gombe Festival. G-O-O-M-B-A-Y, I think it's spelled, but it's pronounced gum as in chewing gum. Gombe. The Gombe Festival which Bermudans take such pride in. And they have these various troops. So, for example, we may have the Rollins Masquerade, Hanley's Road Masquerade, etc. Same thing. They got them from different parts of Bermuda. And the Gombe is equivalent, I would say, here is a take of the masquerade. But it's more like wild mass, as I believe we used to call it here. One of the things I found interesting is that they have the big drum, the bass drum, and the kettle drum, but there's no fife. They don't have any fife. But they have the same type of costume with the peacock feathers. And we saw them here because some of them came here for Culturama 50. But again, the pride. At the Botanical Gardens there, they set up a stage and the Gombe dancers came and they performed. And again, you saw similarities. You heard the names: Morton, Webb, Rabane, Cannoneer, Williams, Rollins. Sing his names. Prentice, Tyrrell. In fact, one of the gentlemen who is well placed at the dockyards and who took us around was Mr. Tyrrell, who's also involved with the Parliament. I think he tells me he is the government whip. And he explained that his relatives here are Alfred Tyrrell and those Tyrrell family here. Told me to tell him hello if they're listening. Your cousin in Bermuda said to tell you hello. Everywhere you turn, you're reminded of St. Kitts and Nevis. And so, for those who were seeking to question, I hope that tonight I've taken some time to explain why. And I've made a commitment that the NIA will shortly announce a new approach to try to attract our people home, try to get them to invest, and try to make it easier for them. I have only today written to the Honorable Attorney General, raising with him some legal issues associated with citizenship and some difficulties that some people were having accessing their birthright, citizenship of St. Kitts and Nevis. And he responded immediately to say that this was a matter that the Prime Minister was seized of and he was seized of, and that they were already working on. So there are those in Bermuda listening. I have not been tardy. As soon as I got back, I engaged, because the issues that you raise with me, they need to be resolved so that we can make it easier for you, but also for others in the diaspora, to claim their St. Kitts Nevis rights, their citizenship, their passport. I was proud. I was at the same time humbled to see what our people would have done in this little island called Bermuda to create the type of society that we would like to see replicated in terms of civility, in terms of quality of education, quality of healthcare, in terms of quality of infrastructure. Bermuda don't have any landfill, They do recycling, they do incineration. In Bermuda that every single structure that is erected, every house, every building, must have a cistern. That's how they get their water. The majority of Bermudans do not get any pipe water. No water coming to their house. In fact, I'm told only now some company has started up to do that. So the vast majority of them rely on rainwater captured from their roof and into their cistern to supply water to their homes, and it works. From my observation, the island runs well. It runs like clockwork. The people are civil to each other. There's a level of education, there's a level of dialogue there, there's a level of exchange of ideas, a tone to the country that we here in St. Kitts and Nevis can learn from. And so I will, as I go, report further on this trip. But I want to end by thanking Premier Burt, thanking his office, thanking our Honorary Consul, Mrs. Tannock, and her husband, Mr. Tannock, thanking all of our friends there, so many people who went above and beyond to help us and to make us comfortable. There's a lady who's there, Lisa Quinn. I must mention Lisa because Lisa took her day and took us on a tour. And Lisa issued the disclaimer. She said, I want to tell you, I have no family connection in St. Kitts Nevis whatsoever. She said, I would love if I could find a grandmother or grandfather, but I don't have any. She said, however, I came to Nevis many moons ago on my honeymoon, and I fell in love. And I feel that that is where my heart is, that is where I want to be. And so she associated herself with everything Nevisian. The engagement. I went to some of the hotels. You met people who had worked at the reefs. People they had said to me they had worked at Nisbet Plantation back in the day. And then ironically, I came to work here this morning and I ran into my friend Mansfield. And Mansfield said that he had lived and worked in Bermuda for 8 years. So many people have had that experience of going back and forth and engaging. And I am hopeful that Bermuda becomes embedded in the consciousness of Kittitians and Nevisians at home. Just as I'm hopeful that St. Kitts and Nevis becomes embedded in the consciousness of Bermudans in Bermuda and abroad. There is an opportunity here for us to reconnect. And the lady boats went north and took our people to Bermuda. I think there's an opportunity now for Bermuda Air and American Airlines and those to come south and to bring our people home, to visit, to live, to work, to invest, and to be a part of our development. I will leave matters there and I will open the lines and take your calls. 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. I'm hopeful, ladies and gentlemen, that you'll avail yourselves of the opportunity to call in tonight to speak about the matters that I would have raised, but also to speak to any other matter that you would like to raise. Let's go to the phones now and say good evening. You are our first caller. You are on the mark.
Mr. Mark.
Good evening.
Do we have visa free access to Bermuda?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome. Once you have a St. Kitts Nevis passport, you do not require a visa to go to Bermuda. Let's stick with the telephones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening to you.
I'm just calling to put my 2 pence in. Yes, the Honorable Joseph Parry was in Bermuda along with Larry Lawrence, I think that's his name, round face, wear glasses. They came directly to the hotel to look for Lucinda Tyrrell of Brownhill and myself, who was there working. And also...
Which hotel were you working at, if you don't mind me asking?
Which hotel we were at that time?
Yes.
We were at the 9 Beaches.
Okay, okay.
And then the late, what's his name? The one who just passed a while ago. He came while we were at the reefs.
You're talking about Mr. Amri?
Mr. Amri.
Yes.
Right. So Mr. Parry was there and Mr. Amri was there. Different times.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Well, I'm very grateful for that. As I said, I was told when I was there that Mr. Parry had come, but as I said, I had myself no independent recollection of it. I was not told that Mr. Amri was there, so I'm happy that you've added that now. I was told that Dr. Douglas, the Prime Minister, that he had come in 2010 and had addressed the Bermuda Parliament. But the point that I'm making is still the same, caller, that despite the visits, we have really not developed any relationship or tried to sustain it in any way.
I understand.
Right?
I'll just listen now. Okay, I'll continue to listen on the radio.
Okay,
I just wanted to put that piece in.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for the history, because that's important. So, from this call and from what I said earlier then, we can piece together that premiers and Nevis have gone to Bermuda. Prime Minister Douglas certainly went to Bermuda. I mentioned Minister Samuel Duggins, who was recently in Bermuda. And I also mentioned Ambassador Christine Walwyn, who was recently there. What I think we need is a sustained effort. Not just a one-off visit and then nothing else happens, but a sustained effort and a sustained reaching out. So we had the cabinet today, for example, here in Nevis. And I indicated to my colleagues, listen, we need to engage with Bermuda. I don't necessarily need to go back, but I said to Minister Evelyn as Minister of Culture, you know how it might look for us to carry a large troop of masquerades down there to dance, to show them what our version of what they're doing there and calling Gombe looks like. Bermudans are fanatical about cricket. Fanatical about cricket. Could you imagine we're able to develop exchanges when they're doing their cup match, as they call it, which is the equivalent of carnival? They have two teams there, one from one area, one from the next, and they go at it over 2 days. And that is the biggest event in Bermuda, biggest sporting event. Could you imagine if Nevis, St. Kitts could send a team to Bermuda? Everybody knows that we have great prowess at cricket. Could you imagine our youths, our under 15s, under 17s, under 19s, have a team go down to Bermuda, Bermudan team come here? Golf. Do you know that the little island of Bermuda have, I think I'm told, 7 or 8 golf courses? And it's a mecca for golf. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Good night, Mr. Brantley.
You're on the air. Yes.
Yeah. What the dollar ratio to the US, the Bermuda?
1 to 1.
Oh, that's strong.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Callers, let me tell you, on any measure that you want to employ, GDP per capita, as I said, is $122,000. I think that was as of 2022. It might well be higher now. Overall gross domestic product, $7 billion US dollars. 65,000 people, 21 square miles. Their economy is based on services. Insurance, they have a significant global insurance industry, and tourism. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Hello, good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Good evening, caller.
I'm calling out of Station, your regular voice.
How are you, my brother?
Good. Thanks very much. Thanks for all that information, and so happy that you've been there. I heard you just saying that the Bermudans are fanatical about cricket.
Yes.
Well, as a little fellow in St. Kitts, I remember going to Warner Park. I was in my teenage years here. My brother took me to Warner Park. We had a cricket team coming from Bermuda. And I remember the name of the cricket team, the Summer Isles cricket team.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was in the 60s. I remember that very, very well. Anyway, thanks very much, and all the best with all your efforts.
Well, thank you as well. And I've taken the time tonight, caller, because I understand that when we take up taxpayer dollars to do things, we have an obligation to explain. what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so I want the public out there to appreciate that I didn't just get up and say, I want to see Bermuda. That was not my objective. My objective was to go there and to engage in a very meaningful way, which I was able to achieve. And now, I believe, to build on the platform. So just from this program tonight, we have learned that other leaders from Nevis and St. Kitts have gone there before.
Yeah.
But we now need to develop a framework that they can feel comfortable investing and traveling back and forth here. I will say tonight on the radio, because it's something I intend to do, I will be engaging with the Minister of Tourism in St. Kitts, who deals with airlift into RLB, and saying to her that there's an airline that they've started up called, I think, Bermuda Air. And even if it's once or twice a week, to get them to do a direct trip from Hamilton to Bastia.
Yes, yes.
Allow people to come home, because right now one of the complaints that they have is for them to come here, they have to fly either via New York or via Miami and overnight. So I would have left there, for example, on Monday, but I had to spend the night in Miami in order to get down the following day. So they are saying sometimes for them, if they want to get away for a weekend or so, having a direct flight, and that direct flight in terms of distance will not be much more than 2 hours. So it is something that I feel that we need to explore. It is time that we step up to the plate and we start to make some moves that make sense, because as I said, this is you hear what the Premier said? He said, Mr. Brantley, you're pushing against an open door. The door don't open. You're pushing against an open door. So I feel that it's now up to us to do the necessary. And since I've come back, I got a call just today from a Bermudan living in St. Kitts, who said to me that when he and his wife got to retirement and they looked at the money they will get as retirees, the pension, he said, man, we sell everything and we move to St. Kitts, because the money is going to go so much further in St. Kitts, because the cost of living in Bermuda is quite high.
I would imagine that.
So he said, man, based on the money that we get in there as pension, we could live well in St. Kitts and Nevis. So all of these things now people are looking at, and there are opportunities for them. And I say Bermuda, but I am also talking to those of us in Canada and America and England and wherever else too, who have the means and have the ability, that they too should reconnect. And their children and grandchildren should reconnect. One of the things I was so happy about in Bermuda is to see the enthusiasm of the younger ones. In fact, one lady came there. I won't call her name, but she family from right here in the heart of Charlestown. Cedar Trees.
Okay.
And she came there, and when she came, she said, I came because I bring myself, I bring my children, I bring my grandchildren. I want all of them to take a photo with you, because I want you to understand the generations of us that are here in Bermuda.
All right.
So there's an opportunity, and I believe that we should seize it. How are things in Stacia?
Fairly all right, you know. Right now, some rain is falling.
Good, good.
At the moment, yeah. Things are right. I convey your message to those your family members who make birthday.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, they're quite happy. Yes, I'll do that. You're
Okay.
good friends. You stay close.
Okay. God bless. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. All
Okay.
the best.
All right. Let's go stick with the lines. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Good night, on the mark. How are you?
I am well, thank you.
Nice to hear your voice. This is Ermin Leader. I am calling from the Greater Toronto area in Canada.
Yes.
Specifically to congratulate Mrs. Jennifer, no. Dr. Jennifer Liebert for being for being one of the few recipients from our country who received their honorary degrees a few nights ago. Wonderful work, and I wish them all the best, especially Jennifer, knowing, how much work she had put into education and pathfinding and all that kind of stuff to build Nevis.
Well, I joined.
This is from Dr. Ermin Leader and her brother-in-law, Pastor Charles Leader. All the best for you guys there in Nevis. You all are doing great work.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Leader, and I am delighted that you have called, and I want to join in congratulating Jennifer. She has labored hard in the vineyard here in terms of education and development on this island, and I want to wish her all the best. I think it's a fitting honor and accolade that she has received. So, Jennifer, if you're out there and you're listening, congratulations to you.
Yes, indeed she has, and we're really proud of her being the last one in the family.
All right. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for your call, and I trust all is well with you in Canada.
Good night.
Okay, let's stick with the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello? Caller?
Yes.
You're on the air. Listen to the phone, not to the computer.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. Was there any... did you meet anybody to talk about the white and black situation in Bermuda?
The white and black situation?
Yeah, the white people and the black people.
No, I didn't have that conversation, but what is there about the white and black?
Well, they just said there's a large white population in Bermuda.
Yes.
And that I don't want to get too much into it on the phone, but I just wonder if you came across that situation, if anybody discussed it at all. And a lot of that GDP has to do with maybe the white people contributing quite a bit to the overall GDP of Bermuda.
Yes.
And but that's all I wanted to say right now.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Okay.
I appreciate the call. As I said, I wasn't aware of, a black-white issue. I do know that there are black people and white people in Bermuda who are, I suppose, indigenous, so to speak. And I was told that the population was almost 50-50. But I wasn't aware that there was an issue per se. It appears to me that, by and large, from what I observed, bearing in mind I was just there for a few days, that people appeared to live one with each other. And so I don't know much about that aspect of it, but certainly among the black community there, the significance of St. Kitts and Nevis is quite apparent. Let's go back to the phones and say good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
All right, good night, Mr. Brantley. How are you?
I am well, thank you.
And I'm glad you went home.
Well, yes.
From my historical research, there were more Nevisians who went to Bermuda than Kittitians,
Oh, yes?
Yeah.
Mm.
Because, in terms of access to labor, more Nevisians, because you had the cane fields in St. Kitts. Now, the gentleman who spoke about the cricket team, the captain is Lionel Thomas from the village. They call him Rags. He brought a team to St. Kitts to play in the park. He was a St. Kitts player, I think at Leeward Islands, maybe combined too. Up the village, right up where I'm from. And you know what we call, you heard about Bermuda shorts?
Yes, of course.
Right, when I was growing up, you could have people who went to Bermuda. They would be wearing these knee-length pants, and there's certain kind of hats and clothes they wore. So you knew that they went to Bermuda. So they used to move back and forth. So I'm glad. I think Dr. Simmons went before independence, And that is why you find the clause where citizenship is offered to people whose grandparents and so were born in St. Kitts and Nevis. So, but as you said, you didn't mention it, but I stand corrected, but I believe he went to Santo Domingo. So to all of our people down in Bermuda, nice having you.
when I was in UWI, you know they have carnival, right?
Yes.
A number of Bermudans come to UWI in Mona, and when they have the carnival, they demonstrate the masquerade and whatever. So it's nice meeting our people. For those in Canada, good night, Jean Skeet Maynard, my sister-in-law. I hope she's doing well. Skeet, what is she hustler, his sister?
Yes.
This was married to my brother who just passed.
Janet.
All right then. So it's nice that you went. More of us. Next time you're going, invite a crowd to go along with you. People could pay their own way, right? All right then.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, and thank you for the contribution. Bermuda is really on our mind. I think that the turnout, and in fact, as I'm listening to the caller, I'm also checking messages, and I get a message from Sir Walter Lister, who I spoke about, was one of the longest serving parliamentarians there, and he just sent me a message. In fact, I believe that he would not be upset if I were to share. He said, it was a pleasure to help entertain you and Sharon while in Bermuda. For me, your visit to Bermuda was a high in Bermuda St. Kitts Nevis relationship. Your message at the church hall was spot on. You answered many questions raised by the descendants of St. Kitts Nevis. I had a brief survey which shows your visit was appreciated. I have spoken to Madam Tannock about building on the momentum presently in the community by selecting a group of people to have a post-mortem on your visit and see where we go from here. This has been the largest group of St. Kitts Nevis descendants I have ever seen gathered. All the best to you and your wife and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, Walter and Brenda. That's a message I literally just received. Let me go back to the phones and continue to take the calls. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Yes, good night. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Let me block out the computer thing here.
Yes, please.
How are you doing?
I am well, thank you.
Sound like you got something more than just saying from Bermuda.
How are you doing?
I'm blessed.
This sounds like a Bermudan voice, you know.
Beg pardon?
This sounds like a Bermudan voice.
Well, it sounds like you picked up the accent. You learned something.
I learned something.
To the head of the class.
Yes.
Right. So let's start off. A prophet is never honored in his own home. You know that saying?
Yes, I do.
All right. So you, as the premier of Nevis, a leader in the federation, our federation, took it upon yourself, took the taxpayers' dollars, and came to Bermuda to spread the gospel per se. You had a church full of people, Bermudians of Petition and the Vision Heritage, who were there to listen. Almost 200 church couldn't even hold more people. And everywhere you went, people were telling you how they were connected to the Federation, who their grandparents were, whether you knew them or not. And, you know, you get persons back home in Nevis and think it's questioning why you went to Bermuda. You went to bring our people back. You went to get investment money for Nevis and St. Kitts. How is it, if you spent $1, that $1 is going to turn into $10 or $15 back into St. Kitts at this point in time, U.S. dollars. So I just encourage you as a leader in the region, not just in Nevis, but in the region, to continue to reach out to the diaspora of St. Kitts and Nevis, because as history will show, St. Kitts and Nevis is the islands that fed people all around the region. St. Martin, the Virgin Islands, U.S. and British Virgin Islands, Dominican Republic. Bermuda is just your first stop. I will encourage you to continue on, and don't let the naysayers dissuade you. All right.
Well, caller, before you sign off, as a Bermudan, as a
Petition Bermudan.
Okay, as a Petition Bermudan. Forgive me. I was trying to share with my audience some of what I think Bermuda has to offer, some of what I saw on display in terms of your financial services, your culture, your sport, your health services, your tourism. I mean, I saw most of the luxury brands, Rosewood, Fairmont, St. Regis, they're all represented in Bermuda. What would you say to encourage Bermudans of St. Kitts Nevis ancestry to reconnect with St. Kitts and Nevis?
Well, as it was said by the Honorable Walter Lister earlier, right? You are in recent times one of the most recent leaders to come here. The Honorable Denzel Douglas came here almost 15 years ago. But there has to be consistency, right? The same way you all market yourselves to North America or to Europe, market yourselves to the diaspora. When you show Bermudians categorically, this is your country. Don't let anyone tell you you're a tourister. This is your country. Here's a piece of land, not saying giving them a piece of land, but here's a piece of land that costs X, right? Bermudians are smart, are savvy investors. As you saw for yourself, we're 21 square miles. We are like 1/5 the size of St. Kitts and Nevis, but we have a population of 65,000. So what does that mean? That means we have no more space left in Bermuda to buy land. An acre of land in Bermuda, if you can find it, costs $1.something million US.
Wow.
An acre of land in Nevis or St. Kitts is a fraction of that. Talk to them in dollars and cents. That beyond just the heritage part, dollars and cents is what any people, but Bermudians in this particular case, that's what makes sense to them. Show them the economy is growing. Show them you can buy a piece of land, build a house for, I'm just using a figure here, $250,000 US, and rent it out if need be. Let's be real. Bermudians are not leaving their jobs in Bermuda to migrate to anywhere else. They will take their money and invest in other countries, especially those that they know have good health, they have good tourism. St. Kitts and Nevis has transformed from a agricultural industry to a tourism industry in the last 20 years, right? 30 years.
Yes.
So you have a track record to show Bermudians like this is where we were at, this we're at now, right? And as Ms. Cleon said, Cleon Brown said, when she came there, she fell in love. So I would encourage you to stay steadfast, get other ministers, whether it be from Nevis or whether it be from St. Kitts, the tourism minister especially, let her come here and talk to the people the same way you talk to them.
Well, thank you very much for this call, my brother. I really appreciate it. And it's good to hear Bermudan accent on the mark.
Me, boy. I from Stanley Point, boy.
All right. Thanks a million. Take care.
Respect.
All right. Respect. This is On the Mark. It is 25 minutes past the hour of 9 o'clock. We're taking your calls. Let's go straight back to the phones. Good evening. You're On the Mark.
Good evening, Michelle.
Good evening, my dear.
James 4, verse 10 and 11. Humble yourself in the spirit of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Speak not evil one another. Brethren, he that speaketh evil of his brother, and judgeth his brother, speaketh evil of the law, and judgeth the law. But if thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. Sympathy is going out to the family of Edric Stanley. I'm going to miss him when Robert tried to trick him and twist him and turn him. Anyhow, good night.
Good night, and thank you for the scripture. And I'm sure the family appreciates the condolences. Let's stick with the telephones. Good evening, you're On the Mark.
Good evening, Premier Brantley.
Good evening to you, my brother.
How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
You're sounding well, except you have a little cold.
Well, I have some kind of coffee. I don't say I have a coke. I don't feel sick, but anyway, I'm drinking some water.
Yeah, it's all right, yeah. Premier Brantley, yeah, you're listening, right? And I'm here and saying I hope that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis is listening. But especially the young people, the younger people. Because what I am taking from this is that who we are. What is our pedigree?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are small, yes, but we produce good people, great people. And I think that, you know, there should be some kind of program to remind the young people in St. Kitts and Nevis as to who they are and who we are. And to engender some pride in themselves and to know that we can do good things. And we are people who have done good things. And even with the crime, that this might help. You know? And so I just hope that many of them is listening and recognizing that people from here left and went to other places and made good of themselves and helped to build other places.
Yes.
And, you know, muster up some pride in yourself and say, man, I can do something good with my life too. For myself, for my family, and for my country. And stop only talking about, oh, government not this and government not that. It's people that build country. Brantley, you know, even the great United States, when I was in New York, I spoke with many people. And do you know that the Carolinas, not on South Carolina, many of the people were there, can trace back to St. Kitts. Many of them, even in the slave trade, were oriented in St. Kitts. Hello?
Yes, I'm listening to you.
Yeah, many of them were oriented in St. Kitts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we have people all over the place who have made good of themselves. And Lord, I am just praying that the young people of St. Kitts Nevis would recognize that and start to have some pride in themselves. But sometimes you have to show them who they are and show them who we are. So, you know, perhaps somebody should think of some kind of program to remind the people them that, you know, they are some good still and, you know, they can make good of themselves. Good night.
Well, thank you very much for that. And when I spoke earlier about the pride that I felt, it's exactly that. Because when I look at Bermuda, I recognize that if 50% of their population trace their roots to St. Kitts and Nevis, it means that we have built Bermuda. It means that our people have contributed in a significant way to what is there. And as I said, when Sir Walter Lister can tell me that his father came to a menial position, but he grew up to become the chairman of the board, I think they call it WEDCO, that runs the docks. And just to show the movement, if you will, the social and economic mobility of our people. It really speaks, as you said, to our pedigree. I like the word. And we need to appreciate that, because a lot of times we get down on ourselves. We start to say we're less than. We behave like we're less than. We always feel we can't achieve, we can't accomplish. Well, if you want to see what we can accomplish, go to Bermuda and see. Because we contributed to what they enjoy there. And my message to them is, I want you now to come back here and help us. Same way we went there and helped, come back home now and help us. That really was the message. And I think it is resonating. People are excited. The fact that we're getting calls from Bermuda, Bermudans calling it speaks volumes. Let's go back to the phones. We have half an hour to go. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Good evening, caller. You have some radio or something on. I'm getting an echo.
Okay.
Could you move away from it?
Yeah, turn it down.
Yes.
Let me ask something. You know what month of the year they celebrate the carnival?
Well, they have this thing they call it cup match. I'm not sure when it is celebrated, but I don't think they call it carnival. They say cup match.
I'll be interested to know that we occasionally we don't really have to go down to the festival time.
Yes, of course. I mean, and as I said, it's all around cricket. Okay. So I just grabbed my phone here. They say that it takes place August 1st to 2nd.
Okay. August
1st and 2nd.
Good. All right, thank you.
Okay, you're most welcome. Let's go back to the phones. No? Callers, we have asked you please to bear with us, but you can call in. 869-469-1616. 869-469-1700. Let's go straight back to the phones and say good evening, you're on the mark.
Sorry?
Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi. Hello? Okay, caller, it looks like we've lost you. We would be delighted if you can call back in. Again, 869-469-1616. 869-469-1700. Those are the numbers to call. Please call back in. We would be delighted to hear what you have to say. Ladies and gentlemen, this is On the Mark. I'm your host, Mark Brantley. And we've been having a show this evening where we're taking your calls. We started on a very sad note to announce the passing of my brother and friend, Edric W. Stanley. Certainly an Aviation stalwart, but we have segued into talking about my recent trip to Bermuda and the efforts at rekindling the relationship between our people there and our people here. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening, Honorable Prime Minister.
Good evening.
Good. Good information on the trip.
Yes.
It should be worked on, all the efforts should be worked on. And the second thing, you talk about Diwali, but we having two other festivals, the Rastaman having coronation on the 2nd of November, and the Roman Catholics celebrate Toussaint, Saint Toussaint. Saint Toussaint is a very important festival in Guadeloupe where people paint up the tombs of their dead ancestors, and they go back to the tomb on the 2nd of November and drink and fete and party at the night, from up to midnight and all in the cemetery. But really, the Roman Catholics don't celebrate that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Diwali is one of the biggest festivals over here in Guadeloupe. When Diwali is in my area, you have car park on both sides of the road for 5 kilometers or more. That's the amount of Indians live in this country, and it's a big festival here in Guadeloupe too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that again we need to change our posture. I mean, calling the opposition and the government to change our modus operandi and try and work together. The people need that. When you check the challenges that we're facing globally, we need to be united. Otherwise, we're spinning top in mud. Divide and rule cannot get us through to where we're going. And so I'm appealing to the lady for Palm and Mr. Daniel and all the other opposition and governments to come to put something in place that we could start discussing how we can develop a more better mechanism of governance amongst us. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. And one thing I'll say, your message has been very consistent, so thank you for that. I'm going to stick with the phones because the calls are coming in tonight. Okay, I'm sorry. Callers, if you can call back in, 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Let's go straight back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello? Caller, are you there? Okay, we've lost that caller. We're hoping, callers, that you can be patient with us. We're going to continue to try to take as many calls as we can, and we try this caller. Good evening, you're on the mark. Good evening.
I just called to ask the whole of Nevis to come out to the Rastafari celebration of 50 years at the community center on Saturday the 2nd.
Yes, caller, go ahead.
So we just asking everybody to come out and hear what Rasta have to say and just love it, you know. Just come and you can get your comfort. Mr. Brantley, I have a word, right? We are willing to act. Anybody could answer the question. If anybody know the word Lamba.
So people can call in and say whether they know the word.
Lamba, they could call in and explain it. If they can't explain it, I would come back.
All right, thank you. So when you say the celebration?
On the 2nd of November, Saturday at about 1:30.
All right.
Rastafari.
Thank you. Okay, brother.
Celebration.
All right. Okay. Let's continue to take calls at 869-469-1616 and 1700. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Good evening to you.
I'm calling from Cincinnati.
Yes.
But I would like the people in the Federation to know that the former Deputy Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the late Sidney Charles, left Korean school and went to Bermuda and got his contribution in the field of education.
Yes.
So we should be very proud that Nevis is back wherever you go, because the late Sir Alexander Hamilton was also born in Nevis.
Yes.
He was the first Secretary of the Church in the United States. Okay, have a good evening.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for your call. We heard you loud and clear all the way from Cincinnati. We're taking your calls, ladies and gentlemen, at 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. We have about 20 minutes left, and so we have ample time to take as many calls as possible. We are discussing many things, but I raised the issue and made a report as to what I saw and experienced in the island of Bermuda, and certainly people are excited about the opportunity to reconnect one with each other. Bermudans in Bermuda, Kittitians and Nevisians here, we are all from the same root, and so we are trying to reconnect. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Brantley. Sorry, I'll come back again to really extend my condolences to the family of Mr. Edric Stanley.
Yes.
I think I sat in on about 2 different panels with him on radio in the past, and very entertaining and very encouraging, and as a man to really mince his word, I was very educated by some of the things he said, and I really want to express my condolences to his family at this passing at this time, and to the people of Nevis and St. Kitts. Give thanks.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that very much, and I'm sure the family does as well. We have another caller. Let's stick with the phones. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Good evening, Premier Brantley. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm listening to you about your trip to Bermuda, and it's quite interesting what you have chosen to do. I haven't lived abroad for many, many years. I've often wondered, and I don't know if I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know if you're in a position to answer this question. I've often wondered how many Nevisians live outside the country than live here in Nevis. Do you have any idea of that number?
No, I don't, but from all indications, many more live outside than live here.
Oh, absolutely. I would think so. Now, Premier Brantley, I wasn't listening from the very beginning, so I may have missed some pieces. But reaching out to the tourism department is good, but there are also some other avenues that I think can help in what you're trying to do. Some years ago, while I was a member of the Eden Brown Church of God, in their opening, when they built the building, in 2008, I think it was, a large contingent of Bermudans came along with the bishop. I don't know if you had the opportunity to meet him while you were there. A Bishop Lamb.
I not only met him, I took a photo with him and sent it to Pastor Davidson Morton.
Oh, wow.
Because
Great.
he explained to me that he was quite instrumental in partnering with Pastor Dave Morton and his church to make it a reality. Bishop Lamb is one of the biggest preachers, if you will, in the whole island of Bermuda. He has a mega church there. And so he was very, very fond of Nevis and very fond of Pastor Morton and his family, and so I was able to send Pastor Morton that photo, which he specifically asked me to send to him.
Wonderful. I remember, and I had an opportunity to myself to interact with the Bermudans that came here, and I was quite surprised to learn how many of them had vines to St. Kitts Nevis. And that that's one of the times that made me start wondering, wow, how many of our people are out there? So certainly maybe some things can happen even within the church organizations here in Nevis. Let me speak to Nevis specifically, that can make things happen in your journey of what you're trying to do with getting the Bermudans to come here. Some years back I had the opportunity to go to Santo Domingo, and I was excited because that's where my grandmother came from. She was born in Santo Domingo, and it gave me goosebumps to know that I was going to a place where my heritage came from and to learn about the people. And I would like to go back there one day. I truly would like to go back there one day and experience a little bit more of it. But kudos to you and what you're trying to do with Bermuda, and I hope this can happen in other places.
Thank you very much for the call. And as you mentioned, Dominican Republic, our people actually left and went to a place there called San Pedro de Macorís.
Yes.
And to this day, and I only say that because as I looked at the Gombe dancers in Bermuda, which is very similar to our masquerades, that they have a version of it also in San Pedro, which they say comes as well from our people who took it there with them, I'm sorry. So we can see the influence of this very little country called St. Kitts and Nevis in places and pockets around the world. And going back to what a caller said earlier, we need to understand our own greatness sometimes. I don't say that in an arrogant way. I say that because I think sometimes because you're from a small space, you can think of yourself as less than. You can think of yourself as being less able. One of the things I've always admired about my brothers and sisters from Jamaica is that when they step out like they own the world.
Yeah.
Our people have tended to be less, how should you say, they've tended to be more willing to stay in the background. And not that there's anything wrong with that. But I think that it's important that our people, and as the caller said, especially our young people, that we appreciate that we come from great stock. That when we go and we see a place like Bermuda and we recognize what our people have contributed to building, when we go and we see how accomplished our people have become in foreign countries where it wasn't easy for them. Because when you went to England and you went to America and you went to Canada, you were foreigner, you were black, it was difficult, and a lot of our people went there and didn't necessarily have the education when they went, but they did what was necessary. They went to school, they learned, and even if they didn't have the education, their children, they made sure got it. And we have done well, and I think that we need to celebrate. Too often, caller, I hear Nevisians with an attitude of, oh, them they come back here, or them come back here for them think they're better than us, they think they know this, they think they know that. And I'm saying to the contrary, we at home need to embrace those of us who went abroad, because it could not have been easy in 1901 for people to get on a boat and say they are going the Atlantic to say they're going Bermuda.
Yeah.
It could not have been easy. They made the days when you could call back on cell phone and say, I arrived safe, you know.
Yeah.
And our people did it. We have to sometimes reflect on the strength of character, the courage that it took for people to leave these islands here, travel to Bermuda, travel to England. You know what it must have been like if you go on a plane or a jet plane, you take 8 hours to get to England from Antigua. You know what it must have been like when you take a boat and you had men and women who left Nevis, don't know what winter look like or feel like, never see snow, have no idea about what they're going to, but decided that they were going to go. And sometimes I think that our people here underestimate, or perhaps we don't pay sufficient attention to the courage that would have taken and what it says about us as a people. And so for me, it was proud. I was proud, man. When I went to the Docklands, I tell you, Mr. Till, He was one of the fellows there who showed us around, and I felt proud. I said, look, I need this man here walk me around the dockland, and this is what we built. We built it with our hands. And
Absolutely.
so we have contributed in a substantial way, and our people need to understand that and reflect on it, and really accept that greatness that lies within us.
You know, Mr. Brantley, in many cases, a lot of our people from right here in St. Kitts Nevis are doing very, very well, even in the United States, but in a very quiet way. And in many cases, a lot of them don't come back, so you don't know that they're out there. But I can tell you my personal experience of being out there. You have to step out and step up like you're one of them. Learn as much as you can without the arrogance, and then you can come back and do what you must do to continue to grow yourself and grow those around you. My son is out there right now, and I remember he was encouraged, and I thank him. I call him my adopted son. A friend from St. Kitts encouraged him to choose the career path that he's taken in sound engineering, and he's traveling all over the world. It amazes me. If I don't talk to that child in a day or two, he's gone someplace else in the world, not just in the United States.
Caller?
To work, yes. And the opportunities are there. We just need to encourage our people, and when you get out there, let people know where you're from. I remember being in school, my sister Donna and I in school with Jamaicans and other people, and it was like they had never heard of Nevis. And what part of Jamaica that be? And I was very proud to tell them, ain't no part of Jamaica it be. Nevis is a place in the Eastern Caribbean, and we're doing big things. And when I see Jamaicans here, I always smile to myself, because I think to myself, Jamaica, no place is bigger in the world for Jamaicans than Jamaica. And to see them come right here to Nevis and do well, and do very well. And so we just need to continue to encourage our people. Speak up your country while you're out there. Speak up where you're from, and encourage people to come back to your native land and see what we have to offer here. Have a good night, Mr. Brantley.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your call. I believe that this is a type of call that helps us to understand better and really to engage one with each other. And I'm incredibly happy that we're having calls like this evening. We have 12 minutes to go. We're going to continue to take calls. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Good night, Honorable Brantley.
Good night. Good to hear your voice.
Yes, nice hearing yours too.
Yes.
I would like to send out condolences to the family of Mr. Edric Stanley. I admired him a lot, eh?
Yes.
He was a very hard-working man. He was someone who you can talk to. He lived a good life, and has lived an honest life. May his soul rest in eternal peace and rise in glory. And I would like to read just a couple verses here. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refresh from embracing. Good night, and I thank you very much for letting us know about Bermuda, enlightening us, you know. That is very good. And you know you always do a good job. Huh?
Thank you. Thank you, my
Okay,
my
good
friend.
night, sir. All the best to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the scripture as well.
Okay, bye-bye.
It is 10 minutes to the hour of 10 o'clock. We have 10 minutes left, therefore, in this show this evening, this edition of On the Mark. And we'll continue to take as many calls as we can on 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Let's go to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Hey, sir, good evening, good evening. So finally got a chance to get in. Thank you so much for accepting this call. I hope you're doing well. Quick thing, the caller made mention about your coughing issue. I'm suspecting that you're facing the AC while you're speaking. If you can maybe consider the AC vent, maybe you can consider turning it back to it, well, switching, sitting next side so you won't be facing it, you won't have that challenge.
Yes.
Am I being heard?
Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear, and thank you for the advice.
Secondly, last week I had a chance to bring up a matter. I'm so sorry to switching gears in regards to the Bermuda trip. Congratulations on that endeavor and that enterprise, and hope and pray that it brings forth much fruit in a collaboration between the Bermudans and the people of the beautiful traditional things and Nevis. Last week I made mention to you about the challenge we have in regards to the drug issue. As such, kind of laid out basically the path, how we got here we are. You asked the question in regards to when you were growing up, it was in use, but it was not as, you didn't have the kind of bloodshed that we are having today.
Yes.
And you asked, so how do we connect the dots? It was a long answer question. It's a question that I couldn't answer it was a question more than a one-word answer.
Sure.
And the best I can tell you right now, the answer to that situation, what happened is that I do not know how much you know about the spirit world. Alright? And this is what happens. When persons are enticed to do things like using such things, they use cannabis, what they're actually doing, they have entered a spirit world illegally. And what happened is that the Bible makes it clear that the thief cometh to steal, kill, and to destroy. Now, Satan, the very first word to describe Satan in Genesis 3 is the word subtle. It gives the idea that he is very cunning and he's not to be underestimated in his craftiness. And what he does is that the plan is to come in and via this practice of the use of drugs, and at some point in time, not immediately, later down when society and people become accustomed to it and willing to accept it and embrace it, then you start seeing the ugliness of it. By then, it is, I wouldn't say it's too late, by then, it is difficult to get away from. Am I making sense?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, fine. And so the challenge we have today is that, as I said before, our people, especially our young men, are being destroyed. Like, seriously, they are being destroyed. When we look at how they are, especially when they congregate together, like, on the side of the street, the first thing comes to mind, the people are hanging around the drain. They become the drain population. And the sad reality, sir, is that we as a people, somehow, we want them to be better, but there does not seem to be a great effort from an individual or collective means to get this to happen. One of the things that we need to understand, sir, is that our young men, they are, and by no uncertain terms, they are, in particularly, our greatest treasure. Any society, any country, anywhere, any generation, wherever, our men, especially our young men, they are our greatest resource. And they are to be protected, even if we've got to protect them from themselves, because they are their own great danger. They are the own greatest danger. And yet, the problem is, it goes as so far as whereas you find, in my view, in my humble view, and maybe I'll create an issue, a lot of these issues come from poor parenting. mothers and fathers who have dropped the ball in some form or the other with regards to raising up their children. But it's not always them, because if you look in the book of Proverbs, it says, raise up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he shall not depart from it.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible did not give the instructions strictly to parents. It was speaking to everyone. As you said, the old African proverb says, it takes a village to raise a child. So it's not just the parents alone who have that influence on the one a child bringing. Everybody has a part to contribute to it. So this thing, you asked us another question. So what is the solution? The solution, sir, is one that we don't want, and that is simple as well it is profound. The solution to this situation is Christ. Without Christ, we are hopeless. We are fighting a hopeless cause, and we just, at best, we can only respond to the situation via its symptom. But come to the very core, the very cause of it, we tend to ignore. And if you look in the scriptures again, there are two episodes that is mentioned. More than one, but there are two episodes that comes to my mind where Christ was rejected. There was a case when he was tried. They said, "Give us Barabbas." Barabbas was a known thief. He was a known criminal. He was a known murderer. But they said, "Give us this one who has shed innocent blood. Give this one who has to rob other people of their own. Give him. We want him, as opposed to the Son of God." There was another situation also when Christ, when he healed and delivered this man who was called Legion from these multiple demons that was in him. After he did that and started, the people of the town came, when the man clothed in his right mind, and everything's fine with him, got on clothes and everything else. And the very first thing they did, they tell Jesus to leave. We don't want you here. They're more willing to tolerate, they're more willing to deal with and handle a demonized man than they're willing to deal with, than having him. They prefer to have the problem. So this is the challenge we have. The solution is Christ. That cannot be overemphasized. The solution is Christ. We need to keep that clear. The solution is Christ. We cannot, and I said we cannot win this battle for our people without him. The most we can do is respond to certain symptoms of the problem, but the very problem still persists. I wish that we would hear this as simple as I'm saying it. There's so much more I can say, but I think you get the point. That if we want this thing to be fixed, people need to turn to God. As a society, individually and collectively, and we must stop treating Christ as if he's an option. He is not an option. That is the worst thing we can do. There is no viable solution. There is absolutely none. He is the only solution to the problem.
Okay.
Caller.
Thank you for that. We're coming to the end of the show, but I think I can take one last call. Thank you. Hello, good evening. You're on the mark. Hello, caller. Hello.
Hey, good night, Mark.
You're on the air. You have the last word.
Yeah. I'm gonna get to why. Well, what's up? I want to big up to them youth boys from General Level School, beat up Charleston. And I'm looking forward for them to beat up Catley. And this Catley girls, this is a promise. We're going to show them this is like an NRP system. So,
all right,
we're going to beat them.
Thank you very much. I have to leave it there. Before I leave, however, let me just say that I'm told I got a note to say that 3 divisions are playing in the Super 50 Cup in Trinidad. Carlin Bowen took it. He's playing for the West Indies Cricket Academy. Kyron Powell is playing for Combined Colleges on campus. And Akiando Willett is playing for the Leeward Islands. I want to congratulate all 3 youngsters and thank all who called. The banner struck up. It means we have to go. For all who called, all who listened, the calls from Cincinnati, the calls from Bermuda, calls from Stacia. We got calls from Canada. We had a lot of calls this evening. I'm truly grateful for that. This is how I like the show, to get different perspectives, different viewpoints. Thank you very much for all who called, all who were part of the show. And this show is rebroadcast tomorrow right here on Von Radio at 1 p.m. I end where I started, to express my deepest condolences to the family of my friend and brother, Edric W. Stanley, on his passing. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you, good night, and God bless you.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and